Hi, I'm Tim. Welcome and thanks for logging on. Today we have something a little bit different. A few weeks ago I was contacted by an old friend I hadn't seen in years, Rob Nuds. He's a watchmaker out of the UK by training, but these days he's actually working with Arcanaut out of Denmark. He's their brand development head. He asked me if I wanted to unbox one of their watches, and I said sure. So this watch right here is the Arcanaut ARC2 or ARC II Fordite. It is a special edition that is created in conjunction with James Thompson of Black Badger, who is also part of the Arcanaut company. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment, but let's take a look at what's inside the box. In fact, let's zoom out a little bit so we can get a better sense of how big the box is. Here's a hand, here's two hands. You get a good sense of the depth and the length. It's relatively simple packaging. It's a Scandinavian brand, so I'd be surprised if this got as crazy as a Roger Dubuis box from the 90s. You can see inside you have the Arcanaut logo, you have a box, it's matte black, and it's a box in a box. Getting a little bit closer, let's zoom in. You can see that the watch is nicely, not elaborately presented. And then inside it's on a little pillow to secure it, and we have a little tool that allows us to swap straps. And I have to be clear, this unboxing does not include all of the straps that I have off to the side. Let me grab those quick. We have many straps, so I'll show you those. Just keep in mind that the watch comes with a tool and you can load up on as many accessory straps as you like. Now, this isn't totally a factory spec unboxing because you would get some sort of user's manual and warranty information. And here we have only an example of the warranty card. And as you can see, this one is a prototype serial number. Anders, he's the founder of the brand. He attests to the watch's condition. I think 2 years is a little bit stingy on warranty in this day and age, but at the same time, it is a small brand, and I'm willing to bet that if you did have a problem after, I don't know, 2 years and 2 months, they would probably hook you up. So let's take a look at the watch itself. It's actually made in Denmark, which makes it a little bit unusual. There are a lot of watch brands with Danish roots, but this one is actually building the watches in Denmark. It's not some sort of heritage brand like Urban Jørgensen or a brand that is perhaps Danish design like Linda Verdlin. This is very much Danish design and fabrication with a few important distinctions. First, the movement. It's made in Switzerland by the Swiss branch of Festina. It is a Soprod A10, which is actually distantly Seiko based, but it's basically a drop-in replacement, a high-quality drop-in replacement for an ETA 2892A2, which means automatic winding, 42 hours of power reserve, a 4 hertz beat rate, and it does pivot on 25 joules. So think 2892 of a high quality, and you get the general idea. Now, the watch is 100 meters water resistant, and you can see it says so on the back, so feel free to swim with it. In terms of how the strap is fixed to the case, you can see that it's fixed with screws and bars, which I always like to see because that is generally the best way to assemble a watch. It's more secure than spring bars and it leaves less to chance. You do get this little screwdriver with the watch that you can use to equip a number of straps. Here you've got black rubber, you've got green rubber, that would probably be my choice. You've got red rubber, and we have this nice near navy blue. Now here's the important thing. All of these are keyed to the colors of the dial, and the dial is really the defining piece of the ARC2 Fordite. So let's talk about the outside, which is generic to the ARC2s, then we'll talk about the Fordite. In terms of fit, it's nominally a 41mm stainless steel watch. It's not terribly thick at 12.9mm, which I like. It is a little bit broad though. If we just measure the case, lug to lug, it's 49.1mm, but if you look at the strap, well, the strap's got a little bit of span as well. So the total lateral extension across the wrist is a pretty beefy 60mm. So let me throw it on my wrist because my wrist is a known quantity. 16 centimeters circumference for those of you who haven't seen my wrist before. And you'll see that the watch fits flat but broad. This would definitely fit. There's no issues there. I do think if your wrist is much smaller than mine, though, you're going to start to deal with a little bit of hollow space on each side as the strap wants to flare out pretty far. And I do think 15 centimeters circumference is probably going to be the lower limit for wearing this thing without a little bit of like a balloon flare on each side, which could lead to unintentional movement on the wrist. That said, it is a really flat thing. You can see I'm wearing a longer sleeve today and it would have no problem sliding under. There's no reason why you can't use this rather spare and chaste design as a dress watch, though in terms of mechanics, water resistance, and composition, it really is more of a sports watch. We'll take a quick look at the buckle. As you can see, the buckle is relatively plain. It's satin finished. The case is more interesting. As you can see, 3 different finishes. There's a sort of concentric circular brushing on the bezel, and the bezel's fairly intricate. As you can see, it has a very short, flat segment atop. Then it has a conical profile that constitutes the majority of its material. And then there's a very small vertical lip at the outer edge. So it's circular satinated. Most of the case, including the recesses of the flanks and the case tops, those are actually media blasted surfaces. And then we have these little hairline polished segments that frame the recesses on both sides. Now, at first glance, it's a little bit difficult to figure out how you actually set this watch. Taking a quick look on the bottom, you can see that there's a little thumb slot, a little kerf for your fingernail. You pull it out, and it works a little bit like the Clé de Cartier. If you're familiar with that, this is very similar, with the one exception that it does have sort of a socketing lock. So once it's placed into position, it snaps shut and fixes itself for security against accidental displacement. The perceived quality of the machining and the solidity of the part do inspire confidence. So you can wind it this way. It's not the most efficient winder, but at the same time, being an automatic watch, that shouldn't be a constant concern. Pull it out to its stop, and now you can make adjustments. Okay, we're reaching the crux of the matter. This is a watch that's all about the dial. A little bit of background on the company. It was created in 2015, and Anders Brandt, who is Danish, came up with the idea for a company that had relatively simple watches built in low volumes at high quality. A noble goal. In 2020, James Thompson, the creator of Black Badger, which is famous for sort of materials experimentation, design collaborations, and particularly its elaborate luminescence that it's added through collaborations with everyone from MB&F to, well, Arcanaut. And this isn't necessarily a lume collaboration. This is something that James explored earlier on much more expensive watches, and it's the concept of Fordite, a generic term for a sort of layer of automotive paint shop aggregate that builds up as overspray on the floor starts to gain actual thickness and mass. And from the 70s through the 90s, and I think they were using some sort of lacquer, so it's very hard, it's very durable, and notably, it doesn't really mix, so you don't get one indistinct brown color. You get a lot of individual elements, and because it is a thick block, it starts out inches thick. Once you start shaving it down, you begin to see all of the layers and the discrete deposits of different materials, some of which are glossy, some of which are metallic, some of which are quite bright and colorful, and others more grayscale. So that's what's going on here. And since this is an actual shaved disc of that Fordite material, it's completely at random what kind of patterns and colors you'll get. Meaning, though this is a limited series, it is not the kind of watch for which duplicates can be made. Every Fordite dial will be different. Now, you do order direct from Arcanaut, so go on their website, contact them, they'll get back to you. If you want to know how you actually buy one of these and how you actually select a Fordite dial that you like ahead of time, they do have some flexibility in that. Reach out to them directly. That's the best way to do it. So James Thompson, Anders Brandt, and via brand development roles, Rob Nuds, have created this watch that is very minimal. It's got no seconds hand, it's got no date. The dial is completely unadorned. There are no indices. It's not very three-dimensional, although it does have incredible depth effects due to the metallic and lacquer gloss contrast. So it actually looks like you're staring into, well, a bunch of liquid paint mixed together, or maybe a very elaborate lava lamp. Taking a look at the hands, they're skeletonized. You can see they're satin finished with metallic elements. Then outboard, they have orange tips, so you have that high contrast element against the dial base. As you can see, it's got a unique case back, Fordite, portrayed as though it were an element on the periodic table. This is the Arcanaut ARC II or ARC II Fordite. This is number 0, so it's a prototype. If this looks a little bit rough, or the box is perhaps a bit beat up or missing some accessory items, please understand this is a press piece. It gets beat on by Hodinkee, A Blog to Watch, Monochrome, and me, and a million others. So this is actually holding up pretty well, all things considered. You can see there's a little bit of curvature or camber to the case back, so from an ergonomic standpoint, it is very broad across the wrist, but it does have that curvature built in, and you can see there's even a little bit of scalloping or recess to the case back, which helps it to better grip the wrist without applying undue pressure or raising hot spots. So I really like this. This is a lot of fun. This is a very simple watch. If minimalism minimalism is your thing, you know, I'm a complications nut, then you're probably going to want to look for something else. But if you're thinking about small brands and you want something that is not 80% fabricated in the Far East and then jacked up 50 times and sold at a luxury price, this is actually a good place to look, because while a lot of micro brands almost exclusively use parts from China and Hong Kong, this is actually mostly from Denmark, Switzerland, and Sweden, and that has real integrity to it. The unique crown setup is remarkably solid and a pleasure to use, and while I wouldn't want to wind it manually on a regular basis, being able to set it occasionally is a great piece of theater to impress your friends, and in the hand and to the eye at close range, it appears to be built with integrity. So if you want to know more about Arcanaut, find them online. They've got Instagram, they've got a website, and of course they do direct sales, so if you're interested, they are the people to contact. Time out, Tim out, Arcanaut out, and thanks for logging on.